Join us this week as we dive into the powerful story of Joseph, a journey from betrayal to blessing, from the pit to the palace. What happens when life is unfair, when we're wrong, or where we're the ones who've messed up? Well, Joseph's story challenges us to choose faith over fear, forgiveness over revenge, and trust over bitterness. Check out this message on how God can turn trials into triumphs. One time in a land called Canaan, there was a young man named Joseph. He was his father's favorite son, and everyone knew it. How? Well, his dad, Jacob, gave him this fancy multicolored coat, a really big deal back then. His brothers weren't happy about that. But Joseph, he wasn't exactly humble about it. He had big dreams, literally. He dreamed that one day his brothers would bow down to him. And instead of keeping that to himself, he bragged about it repeatedly. Imagine having an annoying brother or sister who won't stop talking about how much better they are than you. Yeah, it got old fast. His brothers had had enough. One day when Joseph came to check on them, they threw him in a pit. Then instead of leaving him there, they sold him to a group of traders headed to Egypt, which was really far away. And to cover their tracks, they ripped up his coat, dipped it in goat's blood, and told their father that a wild animal had eaten him. Well, Jacob was absolutely devastated. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to a man named Potiphar, a rich and powerful man. But here's the thing about Joseph. He was really good at managing things. Well, before long, he was in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. Well, then trouble showed up. Potiphar's wife liked Joseph a lot. Well, she tried to get him to be with her, but Joseph refused. Well, she got mad and made up a false accusation about Joseph, and Joseph was thrown into prison. That's some rough stuff, right? Well, even in prison, Joseph stayed responsible and hardworking, and eventually he met two of Pharaoh's servants, the cupbearer and the baker, who both had some really weird dreams going on. Well, Joseph interpreted them. As it turns out, the cupbearer, he would get his job back. The baker, not so lucky. Let's just say the birds enjoyed their meal. Well, Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him. But guess what? He forgot for 2 whole years. Then one day, Pharaoh started having some strange dreams. Something about fat cows and skinny cows, full grain and shriveled up grain. No one could figure them out. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered this guy Joseph. Well, Joseph was brought before Pilate, and he made something very clear. Sir, it's not me who interprets the dream. God gives the answers. Well, then Joseph explained the dreams. 7 years of plenty were coming, followed by 7 years of famine. Oh, wow. So Pharaoh needed someone to manage food storage wisely. They need to prepare. Well, Pharaoh was so impressed that he put Joseph in charge of the entire land. At 30 years old, Joseph went from prisoner to second in command in all of Egypt. Well, that famine after 7 years hit really hard, and Joseph's brothers came to Egypt looking for food, which they had a ton because of Joseph. They had no idea their long-lost brother was now the guy in charge. Well, Joseph recognized them right away. But instead of revealing himself, he tested them to see if they had changed. Well, so he accused them of being spies and demanded they bring their youngest brother, the only one that stayed behind, Benjamin. They demanded that they bring him down. So when they returned, Joseph planted a silver cup in Benjamin's bag, framing him for theft. The brothers were terrified, but this time, instead of abandoning him, Judah, one of the brothers, offered to take Benjamin's place. That's when Joseph couldn't hold back anymore. He knew they all, including himself, were not the same people. He broke down, crying, and revealed who he was. Joseph had all the power to punish them, but instead of seeking revenge, he said, "What you meant for evil, God used for good. Don't be afraid. I'll take care of you and our family." He forgave them, and instead of being angry, he focused on the bigger picture, that God had used everything for a purpose. So what does this mean for us? Joseph's story is not just about him. It's about how we respond to challenges. You know, when life's unfair, do we let bitterness take over? Or do we trust that something good can possibly come from it? When we've messed up, do we take responsibility and change, like Joseph's brothers? When we have power, do we use it for revenge, or to gloat, or to brag? Or do we show mercy, like Joseph ended up doing? For us, Joseph's story actually points forward to Jesus. Both were betrayed. Both were falsely accused. Both had the power to punish, but chose to love and to forgive instead. Jesus teaches us to love our enemies, to show grace, and to trust God, just like Joseph learned to do. So here's the challenge for us today. Who do we need to forgive? Where do we need to trust God instead of holding on to fear or to anger? Are we choosing pride, or are we giving God the credit? Like Joseph, will we let God have the chance to turn our struggles into something good? Because when we do, just like Joseph, we'll see what others meant for harm, God can use for good. Amen.